Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. There is some serious fallout happening as a result of her guilty verdict. Of course, we talked about this yesterday. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's number 2, found guilty 5 out of 6 counts, carries some pretty serious sentences, provided that nothing strange happens, like Ghislaine Maxwell works with the government or outs some other people or catches a bad case of the vid or, something happens. And so we're going to go through and analyze a lot of the fallout because on yesterday's show, a lot of this happened very quickly. It was kind of a big surprise to us. We were bracing ourselves for a lot of jury deliberation. We were thinking that this was going to go on for quite some time because the jurors wanted highlighters and office supplies and post-it notes and all of these things. And the judge was talking about extending this even through the New Year holiday. And so yesterday afternoon, the jurors came out, boom, they had a verdict, and everybody was like, what? And so we didn't really have much time to piece together any of the reactions. And of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's defense attorneys, people like Bobbi Sternheim, we didn't get a statement from them because they were dealing with the aftermath in court. But Bobbi Sternheim is going to be the subject of one of our segments today, and really the aftermath. You can see this is one of the scenes that was seen out there when she left the courtroom. And so a lot of activity. She gave a statement, and we're going to talk about it today. We're also going to talk about some of the fallout, right? This is a big verdict. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, they palled around with some pretty high-profile people, and many people are speculating that because of this guilty verdict, that there's going to be some serious implications for some of those let's call them co-conspirators if you want to use that word. There's a headline that looks like this. We're going to dig into this story today. Royal crisis. Prince Andrew's lawyers are, quote, in emergency talks amid fears that Ghislaine Maxwell could, quote, name names after the guilty verdict. So emergency talks. Prince Andrew is, feeling the heat a little bit. And then we also have to talk about another lawyer who was in close proximity to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and somebody else named Virginia Giuffre. We're talking about Alan Dershowitz. Now, he's on YouTube. He's a lawyer, and he's a defense lawyer. He's somebody who is very astute at the law. He's, I think, somebody at Harvard. Very, very sophisticated fella. And he was out yesterday after the verdict making the rounds on the cable news channels, and he showed up on BBC News. And after the interview, they issued this statement. BBC said last night's interview with Alan Dershowitz did not meet our standards. He's not a suitable person to interview as an impartial analyst, and we're going to figure out how he showed up on our network for this. So a little bit of drama there that we're going to unpack. And then we have one final question that we're going to ask is, will Ghislaine Maxwell flip? We have a former prosecutor, somebody who actually used to work at the Southern District of New York. He's on Twitter. I happened to find a very interesting thread that he posted asking that very question. And so that is the subject of the poll form that we have that is available. It is linked and pinned in the chat section. It is also pinned in the description, wherever you're watching this. And so the big poll form, the big question, the first question that we have here is the biggest danger to Ghislaine Maxwell. We can see nobody's really responding just yet, but take a look at the poll form. We're going to be checking back in with that a lot today. Also, if you're a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, we have another form that looks like this where you can ask questions. If you're a member, a supporter over there, we certainly would appreciate that. And I'm getting a heads up from Vientica saying that maybe Rumble's not working. And so Rumble is still having some kinks that we're working out there. But if you're a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, this is the form to use. We also have a clips channel where we break up this show into various clips that you can share with friends, family, loved ones, pets, animals, fish, whatever. And we appreciate it when you do that. So let's get into it, shall we? Ghislaine Maxwell, a lot of fallout as a result of the verdict. 5 out of 6 guilty. This is what it looked like in court. And so we can take a quick minute and just observe what's happening here. You can see this sketch artist is really putting some detail in. The headlines, the response that I've been reading all over the place is that Ghislaine Maxwell received the verdict with a steely reserve, that she was somebody who just was not even affected by this. Ice cold. And you can kind of see that in her facial expression. You kind of have this droopy left eye, which is like, oh, great, I knew this was coming. And so this is what the scene looked like. Of course, federal court, we haven't been able to peer inside. And yesterday, as the verdict was being read, I'm imagining the sketch artist is just sketching away. And so now we finally get to take a look. So she's masked up. You can see we start to see some facial features and some eyes and ears and noses of these jurors. Well, not the noses, they're in masks, but they are socially distanced. They are now separated. And it looks like we maybe are identifying the foreman, because he has a microphone. We're not sure if he was just handed the microphone. But this looks like it's the very scene where Judge Allison Nathan, you can see her up there on the bench, where she is saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? And the gentleman or person down there on the first row says, we have, Your Honor. And then she opens it up. And so here we see a close-up of this. I don't know if it's a gentleman or a woman or what we have here, but we have maybe the bleached hair. Actually looks sort of like a younger person relative to everybody else, just by the clothing and things. I would presume that, but not real sure. Kind of full head of hair. Might be it is bleached on top, so he might be the foreman. We don't know much about these jurors at all, so who knows? We see that. Now, the other interesting thing from inside the courtroom is this photograph, because this is Judge Nathan. And I thought this was very interesting. You know, the sketch artist drew this. And if I was, if I had the opportunity to ask this sketch artist about this drawing, I would say, did you draw that facial expression true to form here? Because Judge Allison Nathan looks like she's kind of shocked here. We've got the furrowed brow raised up like, what? What the heck? And so I don't know what she's thinking. Is she thinking Ghislaine Maxwell was just found guilty? I am in deep doo-doo. Or is she saying, how the heck was she acquitted on anything? Acquitted on count 2? Who the heck was on this jury? I don't know what's going on here, but she certainly looks shocked to me. They're like, oh, goodness, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I could be in big trouble. Or, oh, yeah, I don't know. So I would ask the sketch artist about that. Say, is that accurate? What was going on there? And so the rest of it happens, right? The verdict is read. Ghislaine Maxwell is escorted out of the courtroom. And so we've got the U.S. Marshals who are, walking her out. She's been escorted by 2, I think, female U.S. Marshal officers the entirety of the trial, in case some intelligence agency decides to blow the roof off of the courthouse and helicopter her out of there. So she is now being whisked away back. She's going to be held in detention, of course. She's going to come back for sentencing whenever that's scheduled. And so that's it, right? That's the end of Ghislaine Maxwell. She's going to go through the entire sentencing procedure, and there's going to be a lot going on with this case because of the quality of her legal representation. She's going to have her lawyers, splicing and dicing every which way. As we're going to hear, they're already working on it. And so we know that we talked about this, I think this was yesterday or earlier in the week. We specifically were watching Christian Everdell. Even when the jurors asked a question, when they submitted a note, they said, we want that note because we think that there's a problem with that note. And we went through a letter yesterday identifying exactly why this could be an appealable issue. He's saying the jury is misinterpreting the jury instructions. This is legal error, judge. Hello, unless you correct it, we're going to be raising this on appeal. And so you can see every splice of the way. They were planning for this. This is not something that they were not expecting. I mean, I think that most people were if you can sort of erase the cynicism that I had, and I know many people had about this case, sort of like, oh gosh, what a throwaway prosecution this was. Was she going to get convicted? I mean, the evidence has been pretty consistent over the years. What we saw in court didn't match what I think, a lot of the evidence actually showed. Obviously, we have a whole mind map of a lot of other data that we didn't hear about at all in this prosecution, insanely. But so you can see here, the defense knew this was happening. They know that the mind map exists. They know that there's hundreds of women who've been implicated as a result of Maxwell and Epstein. And so they did very well. I mean, they narrowed this thing down to 4 people that came into court, and it was like 2 of them who were any good. And so this is what we've got. They've been planning for this for a long time. And so Ghislaine Maxwell and her family are leaving the courthouse yesterday. You can see we've got Christine, she's on the left, Isabel in the middle, and then Kevin over here on the left. They've been attending most court, most days. I think Isabel or I'm sorry, Christine joined them a little bit later, but they were exiting the court building, and this is what this looks like. Now, Bobbi Sternheim was also leaving the courthouse, and she runs into the media. And so this is the first time we really hear much from her that I'm not even sure we've even really seen her speak quite frankly. But here she is. She comes out now, and of course the media, everybody is just, hoarding around this location because they need a statement from her, and so do we. Here it is. Walking down the courtroom steps, lots of flashing lights. The media is very, very excited to hear what she has to say. We just found out that Maxwell is guilty, 5 of 6 counts.
Bobbi, please come over here. And if you can please take the mask.
We firmly believe in Ghislaine's innocence. Obviously, we are very disappointed with the verdict. We have already started working on the appeal, and we are confident that she will be vindicated. Everyone, be healthy. Have a happy new year.
How is Ghislaine doing? Can you deny that?
That's it. Boom. So it throws the mask on. You get like 4 sentences out of her, but it's the obvious answer, right? Bobbi Sternheim going to come out. We're very disappointed. Already working on an appeal. Going to be vindicated. It's like in the manual of what to say, right? That's it. No other comments. Put the face mask back up, and then she scoots on out of there. Now you can see, right, this is the other angle of this. This is what she was looking at. And I think we recognize some people over here. Is this a shout out to Addy Ads over there? I think that's him right there, just getting right into it, which is just outstanding. So a lot of people there paying a lot of attention to what's going on. Bobbi Sternheim is, now exiting. Here's another angle, just so you can kind of see how it was, how many people were out there waiting for her to finally exit the building.
It's like 70. I mean, but she
So a lot of media there, and there's a lot of reactions. A lot of people are sort of, this is a big case. We've been following it for a long time. It was, I would say, unsatisfying. Is that fair? I think pretty unsatisfying. But it is still something that, okay, another bad person who's been a wrecking ball in society for a long time is no longer out there. That's a good thing. But is that it? Well, we'll find out. We have a lot more to dig into, but let's check in with the winning side. The government is very happy about this. U.S. prosecutor from the Southern District of New York, he's the U.S. attorney out of there, Damian Williams, gave an announcement yesterday, a press release. He gave a statement about this. Haven't heard from Maureen Comey, Allison Moe, Rohrbach, or Pomerantz, but we are now hearing from Damian Williams. He is the head U.S. attorney out of the Southern District of New York, and here's what he had to say.
A unanimous jury has found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of one of the worst crimes imaginable, facilitating and participating in the sexual abuse of children, crimes that she committed with her longtime partner and co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein. The road to justice has been far too long, but today, justice has been done. I want to commend the bravery of the girls, now grown women, who stepped out of the shadows and into the courtroom. Their courage and willingness to face their abuser made today's result and this case possible. I also want to thank the career prosecutors of the Southern District of New York who embraced the victim's quest for justice and have worked tirelessly day in and day out to ensure that Maxwell was held accountable for her crimes. This office will always stand with victims, will always follow the facts wherever they lead, and will always fight to ensure that no one, no matter how powerful or well-connected, is above the law. Thank you.
All right, so that's Damian Williams, U.S. Attorney, Southern District of New York. And, the standard prosecutor statement as well. We heard the standard statement from the defense. Disappointed, going to continue to fight. Appeals coming away. She's going to be vindicated. He comes out. We stand with the victims. Shout out to the career prosecutors is what he said. Career. I think that's supposed to be a compliment. Like this is your career. You're a career prosecutor. I think that's what he meant, but All right. So he says stuff like that. And, we didn't hear much from him at all throughout this entire thing. He says they worked long and hard and tirelessly, which I'm not real so sure of that. I mean, to be candid, they did do a lot of work in the pretrial proceedings. I mean, this case, like I said, at the beginning, the outset of this, there was a lot of work that went into this case. A lot. The pretrial proceedings did not match what we saw in court, in my opinion. We got 8 days out of a prosecution here. 8 days. That's it. They told us it was going to be a 6-week trial. It was like 2 weeks. Less than that, wasn't it? Yeah, it was about 13 days maybe. So they said it was going to be 6, and then it turned into 13 days, less than 2 weeks. So all of that rigor and that real, working hard tirelessly day in, day after, all that stuff. It's like, did you really? Why did it take less than a third of the time that you estimated it was going to take? I don't know. Now, that's part of the problem of being a ultra sideline observer in a lot of this stuff, is that we are reading reports from people who are observing something through a screen that is highly redacted and that they can't even see. And this is part of the problem with, I think, some of the older systems of justice that we have, with the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency. We really can't see what's going on. And so we are commenting with a little bit of a blind spot. But that's Damian Williams. They're celebrating. They're happy about this. And as I said, right, didn't hear too much about, we're going to go after any of Ghislaine Maxwell's co-conspirators, and we're going to make sure that everybody else who was involved in this case is brought to justice. And Jeffrey Epstein, his, wreckage is not going to be left to stand. We're going to continue on, even though Ghislaine Maxwell is now convicted. Our work continues. Didn't hear any of that. Just said, we're always going to stand with victims. Justice was done. Long time coming. Big pat on the back, which is exactly what we predicted was going to happen. Put a nice bow on it. Wrap it up. We're done. Thanks. Thanks for playing. So we get that statement from him. Now, to be fair, right, this is good conclusion for a lot of people out there who were harmed by Maxwell and by Epstein. We have this victim's attorney, Spencer Kuvin, says, he's the lawyer who represented several of them, says that the verdict here, the guilty finding of Ghislaine Maxwell, was seen by my clients as an absolute and unmitigated victory. And so, we're going to see a distinction here. Let me just sort of preview this conversation here. An absolute and unmitigated victory. And it's like, okay, like I can understand, but this wasn't just Ghislaine Maxwell, was it? And we're going to see an article here from Jonathan Turley that I clipped later on in the show, where he gives us this distinction between travel, transportation, and destination arrival. Ghislaine Maxwell, yeah, maybe she was involved in transporting a lot of these women. These conspiracies that were happening, she was involved in all of those things. But even if she was just transporting them, what happened when they got there? That's weird. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell taking them anywhere? It's because when they land, they engage in something. And so the question is, why are we only focused on the transportation, not the destination? Who was receiving these services when all of these women were being trafficked all over the world? And so, I hear statements like this from the victims. It's like, well, this is an absolute and unmitigated victory. Okay, maybe it is. But is that, are you done? Like, is that, you just put a bow on this thing? Presumably hundreds of men have abused women, and the only person who's going to prison for this thing is Ghislaine Maxwell? What? How does that work? How is that a win for victims of, abuse? Anyway, I don't know. So here's this guy. Here's his statement.
This is a victory for all of the victims of Miss Maxwell and Epstein. Moreover, I think this is a victory for all young children, boys, girls, women, and men who are victims of abusers like this. It will give them the needed push to step forward and to speak their truth and to hopefully get justice like these young girls have with respect to Miss Maxwell. And hopefully this is not just the end of one saga, but the beginning of another. And that is for all abuse victims to come forward and hold their abusers accountable in court. So this is definitely seen by my clients as an absolute and unmitigated victory. This fear that was ingrained in them, not only by Jeffrey Epstein, but also Miss Maxwell, was that they could be destroyed, their lives could be ended, their families could be destroyed, their reputations, their futures could be destroyed. So it takes an incredible amount of bravery for the young women to come forward and tell their truths and tell their story. And to see others step forward just empowers victims around the world, hopefully, to step forward and speak their truth.
Yeah, cheers to that. And you know, hopefully he's right about that. And that the pressure continues. I don't think anybody has been, advocating that stops. I think that's what everybody's been concerned about, is the idea that now all the pressure just dissipates. Oh, it's done. Oh, well, good. We got rid of it. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein and the Ghislaine Maxwell saga is over. I guess we're just going to, conclude at that. So he did there say that, with respect to Ghislaine Maxwell, they're finding peace. And so I think that's a nice little way to synthesize these two things, right? The people who are abused by Ghislaine Maxwell, they're satisfied that their abuser, Ghislaine Maxwell, is being dealt with, but they're not satisfied about the other abusers who continue out there, and he's advocating for that. I hope this is the start. I hope this is the spark that lights this thing up, and other people come forward to continue the pressure. And we didn't hear much of that from the U.S. government, though. We'll see what they do. They're the ones with the power. That attorney doesn't have much say in who gets charged or not. That happens at the DOJ. What are they going to do about it? We have another lawyer. This is Lisa Bloom. I believe we have her on the mind map.
I can't overstate how profoundly courageous it is to walk into a courtroom full of strangers and to open up the most horrific and humiliating parts of your life and to speak about it, and then to be cross-examined about it and have it all picked apart by paid defense attorneys who say that your memory is wrong, or that you're lying, or that you're doing it for money. Of course, nobody gets any money out of a criminal conviction, but that was the argument that was made. But the four women, they stood up to it, they answered the questions, they got through it, and they are heroes, I think, to millions of people worldwide today.
Those dirty defense lawyers asking those hard questions. Well, look, she's sort of right, saying that you don't win money in a criminal case. There are things like restitution and stuff, of course, that come in a criminal case. But the argument that those defense attorneys were making is that these criminal charges were filed, they were brought, they were bolstered so that the women could get claims paid higher compensation out of the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund. And we know, because we looked at those documents from the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, that they will award higher payouts if there's active litigation or if there's active consideration of prosecution, because that's a bigger, more valuable claim. That's a bigger threat. They'll make it go away. It's like a car accident. The more injured you are, the more you get paid out. Same concept here. So that was the line of questioning that the defense was using. But of course, she's a victim's lawyer, and so she's going to beat up on defense attorneys. I'm okay with that, and I agree with her. I think that it is good that people who are hurt are feeling closure and they're feeling like they can move past this. And I hope that's true, right? I mean, I really hope that there is healing that comes out of this for everybody that was involved. Speaking of somebody who was involved, we are now hearing from Annie Farmer, the only woman here who actually testified with her full name. She was appearing on GMA. I think is that Good Morning America, something on ABC News. And the news anchor is saying, look, Annie, good Lord, you've been through a lot here. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. You just testified. You got cross-examined. Those scumbag defense lawyers were, splicing and dicing all over the place here. You survived. You got a verdict. How do you feel? Tell us, Annie.
It's a tremendous relief to be here. I wasn't sure that this day would ever come, and I just feel so grateful that the jury believed us and sent a strong message that perpetrators of sexual abuse and exploitation will be held accountable no matter how much power and privilege that they have.
And Sigrid, what was your reaction, and what does this mean in the bigger sense for the many other women who have alleged their lives were also damaged by Maxwell?
It's really a historic moment in the history of sexual trafficking. What you've seen here is a jury who took it upon themselves to believe in these victims, hear their voices, and render a verdict that told the American public that regardless of power, privilege, whether you're a president or a prince, you will be held accountable if you engage in sexual trafficking.
You will. Whether you're a president or a prince, you will be held accountable if you're engaged. What are you talking? What? Ghislaine Maxwell's going to jail. Nobody else who's involved in it. Nobody who participated in her services. Ghislaine Maxwell's the drug dealer, but none of the drug users are in trouble. You just pop the drug dealer. Okay. Historic, she says. It's historic. All right. I guess so. It sounds like it's a pretty standard case. Somebody's charged with a crime. Government doesn't look into it at all. Wraps it up easily. All right. Done with that one. Okay. If they say it's historic, I guess it's historic. Now, I'm not so sure about it. I previewed a little bit earlier an article from Jonathan Turley, very smart attorney. I have a snippet from a blog post over at his website, jonathanturley.org. Recommend you go check it out. Follow him on Twitter. But he gave us this interesting distinction. I like how he phrased this. I like clear lines and strong delineations. The idea about transportation versus destination. Here's what he says. Maxwell's conviction leaves glaring questions over the lack of prosecutions. It's what we've been talking about this entire time. Maxwell becomes a scapegoat. They decide that they have enough with her. They don't have to go after anybody else. Turley says there is concern that the Justice Department has previously worked to scuttle rather than to pursue the underlying wrongdoings, including a disgraceful plea agreement. And we talked about this. We spent all 10 minutes on this yesterday. This is in the mind map. It is the 2007 plea agreement. I agree with him. It is disgraceful. Jonathan Turley says, and I'm a defense lawyer, okay? I agree. Says, I was an early and vocal critic of that deal with Epstein. Despite a strong case for prosecution back then, Epstein's lawyers were able to secure a ridiculous deal with prosecutors. He was back then accused of abusing more than 40 minor girls, with many between age 13 and 17. Epstein pleaded guilty to a Florida state charge of felony solicitation of underage girls. He served a 13-month jail sentence. Okay, that's like insane, folks. Insane. If that happened, 40 underage abusing between the age 13, that alone would be basically a life sentence for anybody else. He got a 13-month jail sentence. In Arizona, we have what's called dangerous crimes against children. They are extremely amplified sentences because there are young children. And so somehow, by some way, shape, or form, back in 2007, I was not even a licensed lawyer yet, this deal happened. Epstein, at the time, was facing a 53-page indictment that could have resulted in life in prison, right? As I just said, the charges are insane for that age. 40 times somebody who's 13, 14, 15, insane. However, he got a 13-month deal. He says, moreover, to my lasting surprise, former Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, this guy, was made labor secretary under Donald Trump. He later resigned. Now, this deal was done in 2007. Donald Trump was not the president then, not even close. And so this guy has been a government prosecutor, basically bureaucrat, forever. So I went and looked him up. He's an American attorney. He's the guy who entered into this plea deal. Labor secretary, resigned at some point. He was confirmed by the Senate in Trump's cabinet, 2017. Member of the Republican Party. Originally appointed by Bush, served as the assistant attorney general. In 2007 and 2008, as a U.S. attorney, Costa approved a plea deal that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to plead guilty to a single state charge of solicitation in exchange for a federal non-prosecution agreement. Nuts. After Epstein was arrested again in July 2019, Acosta faced renewed and harsher criticisms for his role, and he resigned in July 19th. So he's been around forever, right? He was in office, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District from 2005 to 2009 under both Bush and Obama. Stuck around in office, got promoted. He was the dean of an international college of law. And then he was the Secretary of Labor for Trump for 2 years until the renewed prosecution of Epstein, and then they booted him out. So this guy entered into that non-prosecution agreement, 13-month jail sentence, 40 underage minors. I repeat myself. Turley says, while the FBI aggressively and correctly pursued Maxwell, there is no evidence of such a concerted effort to investigate the men who may have been involved in the trafficking. Given the all-out effort on Ashley Biden's diary, it might be nice to see an equal effort on Epstein's alleged co-conspirators. Okay? Maxwell was the transporter, but she was bringing people around for a reason. Who was using the services? Who were these people? If Epstein allegedly transported women and girls to his islands for a visit with himself and these men, there is ample reason to interview them. We have entire flight logs from Visosky and from David Rogers. Lots of names on there. Didn't hear any of them called at trial, other than the victims. Says it's not clear if Maxwell has further evidence to offer. We don't know. But this is the time to produce it if she does. While she is not practically looking at 65 years, she could easily receive around 15 years even as a first offender. That sentence could be reduced with cooperation credit. What is not clear is how focused the SDNY is on developing cases that focus not just on the, quote, transportation, but on the destination of these flights. And so that's the question. How interested is the SDNY in making any of this go forward? Do they want further prosecutions? We did a poll yesterday, and the answer to that largely was no from everybody. Very obvious that it seems like they're not interested in that. We see here, if we take a look at the poll form, biggest danger to Ghislaine Maxwell looks like it is, the poll form is pinned in the chat. We got a 50-50 split on this. Intelligence agencies versus U.S. government incompetence. Not too concerned about any of the pandemic concerns. U.S. government incompetence or intelligence agencies. So if there's another possible suggestion there, maybe I'll add that into the poll and we can reset it. All right, we have more to get to now. So the question that lingers is the U.S. government, is the Southern District of New York, are they done? Are they going to be investigating this any further? Are they going to be digging into this and identifying anybody who was at the destination where these women landed, who was actually using the services? Yes, Maxwell was the drug dealer, but what about the addicts? What about the people who paid for it and allowed this orchestration to continue unimpugned for decades? What about them? We going to dig into them? Probably not. But they might go after the money. Ghislaine Maxwell had a lot of it. U.S. government now has their hands on her. And maybe we'll see something if they start unraveling where the money goes. We see the Daily Mail did a nice job assembling a couple of the different Maxwell properties. When she was obtained, she said, I just had $2.6 million. But previously that year, she wired $22 million by Epstein to her husband, her tech CEO husband, Scott Borgerson. So she knew. Remember, Ghislaine Maxwell was on the run for quite some time. When she was arrested, she claimed he worth $2.6 million, despite buying and selling $16 million of mansions since 2015 and $22 million wired to her by Epstein to fund her lifestyle. And we heard about some of those funds in trial. We've got a lot of different details that have come out. So Ghislaine Maxwell now is 65, facing 65 years behind bars is what this says. Forensic accountants have now gotten involved. The U.S. government, they want that money. Says she has a net worth of about $15 million or about $20.2 million in 2015, but she claims she was down to just 2.6 by the time she was arrested. These forensic accountants found mysterious transactions between Epstein and Maxwell and offshore funds, as well as buying and selling homes using private companies that made it impossible for the FBI to fully gauge exactly how much cash and how much assets the now convicted trafficker has. And do you remember this? I mean, she was on the run. They were looking for her every which way. This is where I believe she was actually arrested. Justice finally caught up with Ghislaine Maxwell. She bought a 156-acre ranch in New Hampshire called Tucked Away. She reportedly bought in secret using one of her aliases before her arrest in 2020. You know how much property that is? 156 acres? Huge. It's called Tucked Away because, I mean, it really is tucked away. And this woman is one of the most wanted women in the U.S. government. I mean, back at the time when she was on the run. And she was able to buy a property using secret names, and not just any property, right? She's not renting a hotel room somewhere. This is a huge property. They also saw that she transferred this one. Sounds like there was a new house in that Belgravia that was a property somebody bought for $1.75 million in August, and she had to sell this to pay for her legal bills. So some people have asked and sort of speculated about what her legal bills were. I've heard that the court allowed something like $6 million to be set aside. We can see that she started sort of fire selling some of her properties. This sold for $1.75 million. So what I would guess happened is she sort of started to divest assets. She started to transfer stuff that was liquid, immediately liquid. She just got rid of it. And then the stuff that was not liquid, that was going to be used as collateral, or she was going to sell that once she got permission from the court to use some of that stuff for legal fees, right? The court is going to say, okay, you can use some of your funds for what you need. Some of it's legal. We're going to seize the rest of it if they think it was ill-gotten gains or anything like that. So all of the liquid stuff she sends over to her husband, this guy, Scott Borger, is allegedly, this is what's happening. So she sold her house also in the Upper East Side, disposed of the 5-story, 7,000 square foot townhouse, banking $15 million. Maxwell also reportedly transferred $15 million to her husband, this guy, Scott Borgerson, after they married in a move that could protect the majority of her wealth from being claimed by the alleged victims of Epstein. So all the money now is being moved around. So, this was all orchestrated. All planned. It's all planned. She's on the run, moving assets around. So, oh no, I've only got $2.6 million in my bank account. I'm going to need that for my legal funds. Well, we're going to seize it, and you can't seize it. I need that money. Well, you're going to have to get it from other things. So, some of the properties that she's identified, she can start to liquidate those. If she already had a big liquid amount of cash, the court may have not have, those transactions may not have been able to go through, or that the funds from those transactions may not have been available to her without some sort of court, interference. So they were divesting a lot of this stuff, probably married this guy, Scott Borgerson, who knows what his story is, but she marries him. He holds on to $15 million, $30 million. Since they're married, you get all these privileges that attach to that. That money is held in nice escrow while Ghislaine Maxwell appeals her verdict and maybe reconnects with it later down the road. British socialite also hid, this was a $3 million mansion surrounded by private trees along private road in Manchester by the sea. So even though she was on the run, she was living lavishly. And the U.S. government, of course, is going to go start tracking those things down, if they haven't already, and seeing what they can do to continue to punish Ghislaine Maxwell as a result of her conviction. And so Ghislaine Maxwell is now going to be waiting for sentencing. We're going to find out when that date is. But there's a lot of other things happening as a result of the fallout of the convictions. Prince Andrew is one example of that fallout. Prince Andrew and his attorneys are allegedly in emergency talks after the guilty verdict hit the airwaves. The U.S. Sun is reporting this, says that they are concerned that Ghislaine Maxwell could in fact name names after a guilty verdict. And so we've got two sources on this one. We've got this one, and then I have an article from the Mirror in the next slide over. But it says a legal source connected with Maxwell's case told the Mail on Sunday that a guilty verdict could spell trouble for the royal. You can see this is a picture of Prince Andrew with his arm wrapped around the small of Virginia Giuffre's lower back. At the time, Ghislaine Maxwell standing there smiling away. We have somebody taking a picture with a big, nice flash right there. Curious how that works, isn't it? Yeah. And so after the verdict came out, source who's close to the Maxwell case said this could be bad news for Prince Andrew and other high-profile men who hung out with Ghislaine and Epstein. It's possible that she's going to begin to cooperate, tell what she knows in an attempt to lessen her jail term. We know that prosecutors are looking at other co-conspirators in connection with Epstein's ring. Ghislaine undoubtedly possesses information which could assist prosecutors in other cases. If she decides to cooperate, her testimony could be devastating. The source says She was Epstein's right-hand woman for years. Can you imagine what she knows? Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can imagine. Yeah, that's why we're interested. We would like to know that. And flesh out the rest of the scum out there. We have Prince Andrew lawyers now also being reported from the Mirror say that they are, quote, locked in emergency talks. The Ghislaine Maxwell verdict is likely to have sparked fear in his legal team. So the Mirror is reporting that his lawyers were locked in emergency talks last night following the conviction of his pal Ghislaine Maxwell, as they considered calling on one of her victims to help him in his U.S. civil case, talking about Virginia Giuffre. Guilty verdicts left the British socialite convicted, looking at 65 years, but the jury's decision sparked fear in the Duke of York's legal team, given the burden of proof in a criminal case is far higher than that is needed in a civil case like the one Andrew is facing. So do you see why his lawyers are freaked out a little bit? They're making the case that there's no evidence of any of this abuse. Prince Andrew and his legal team are saying there is nothing here to support any of these claims. He's being sued civilly. In a civil case, we think about it as a much lower standard, because it is a much lower standard. And what happened is, when we think about beyond a reasonable doubt, we think of sort of, over 80%. If it's beyond any reasonable doubt, if it's like over 80% that you're feeling pretty good about it, I think that's low. I think it should be like 99%, but this is an analogy that they teach you. If it's like over that, then that's enough. When you drop down to a civil standard, now we're talking about preponderance of the evidence. We're talking about a much lower standard. And so the way that we kind of say that is it's 51%. And so Prince Andrew's lawyers, and those are not perfect analogies, but broad strokes. Prince Andrew's lawyers are saying they just got Ghislaine Maxwell on the 80% standard. Uh-oh. Meaning they convinced the jury that there is enough there to get her. And we know what they have against you. And based on the fact that the jury believed that that was enough to get her, we might think that they will be very easy to convict you at a lower standard. Giuffre doesn't even have to get over that 80%. All she needs is a nice little 51%, more likely than not. And so you can see Prince Andrew's face. He's not happy about it. Looks a little bit backed up. It goes on. Lawyers over there for the royals say that despite their concerns, they say that Maxwell's trial was disastrous for his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, who the prosecution refused to call despite being Epstein's longtime teen slave. Now look at this pattern. Look at this language. We have the prince using Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, his legal team. This is public relations. This is PR. Saying, we know now that Virginia Giuffre, as we're going to learn soon, is suing him for several different charges. And he's saying that the U.S. government didn't even call her. They didn't think that she was a good witness. They think she's a terrible witness. That's why they didn't bring her in court. So therefore, her case against me is also bad because the U.S. didn't use Virginia against Ghislaine. They thought she was bad, which means she's also bad against me. And so you're going to see this pattern happening. We're going to hear from Alan Dershowitz next, who says the same thing because he's also being sued. More telling, his legal team believe is testimony provided during the disgraced socialite's criminal trial. They think has left the lawsuit seriously, if not fatally weakened. Why are they panicking? During the Brits case, one of her 4 victims testified how she was introduced to Andrew's billionaire friend Epstein. The woman, known back then as Carolyn, revealed that it was not the Brit who recruited her, but it was Giuffre. So the story being that Carolyn went through Giuffre, not that Carolyn went through Maxwell. Maxwell would be the connection to Andrew versus Virginia, who would be the connection to Andrew. So it's sort of breaking the chain there. Already, in a controversial effort to prove the royals' innocence, the Duke's attorneys have portrayed the accuser as a criminal. So they've been sort of smearing Giuffre, saying she's a criminal. She was part of the ordeal. She's a co-conspirator. She was rounding up all these women for Epstein. Now, following the conviction, they're saying that bringing Carolyn back to court will show that Giuffre was involved in the abuse. So do you see what they're saying? They're saying that this gal, Carolyn, came into court, testified, said that Giuffre was a problem. Giuffre was the person who recruited her. And so Prince Andrew is just happy as a clam. He's just smiling ear to ear. He's saying, oh, perfect. So now I get to go back into court in my case and say Virginia is a monster. She was somebody who was bringing other women, in particular Carolyn, over into this entire ordeal. Andrew's defense team says that this is the smoking gun, says that Virginia played a role in the pyramid scheme. Andrew's lawyers, they say, have convinced him that if he is to stand any chance of preventing her case from going to court, they need to fight with fire, and nothing should be off limits. They believe Carolyn's evidence seriously weakened the case because Carolyn said Giuffre introduced her to Epstein, and that undermines Giuffre. Now, Giuffre is also somebody who is suing these two people here, and there's been a lot of activity. So on the same day we got a guilty verdict out of the Maxwell case, we got another order out of this court. And I apologize, somebody brought this up yesterday on the stream, but I broke this down a little bit further here so we could take a second look at it. Virginia Giuffre, she is the plaintiff. She's suing Alan Dershowitz here. He's a lawyer. I believe he's like emeritus over at Harvard. Alan Dershowitz. He was in the Netflix series covering about this. He's been talking a lot about this. He is a defendant in this civil lawsuit, a very similar lawsuit that Giuffre is filing also against Andrew. Okay? And we just heard what Prince Andrew was saying. He was saying, oh, this lady was a part of the hierarchy. She was a part of the entire scheme. She was just as bad as Maxwell, just as bad as Epstein. And so any of her claims against me, says the prince, are useless because she's a monster, right? She was a bad actor. She's suing me. Carolyn from the Maxwell trial says that she was the recruiter. And now she wants to bring a claim against me. He's saying that's unreasonable. So very similar claims coming against both these guys. And you can see they've been consolidated here. So this looks like it is a 2021 case. You can see this 21 number here. We've got a 19 case. You can see that here. And if we zoom in and take a look at the actual order that was signed off on by the two assigned judges, Loretta Preska and Lewis Kaplan, here's what it says. Tells us that a document entitled as a settlement agreement and a general release, so a big agreement, is said to have been executed by the plaintiff in these action and by the late Jeffrey Epstein, filed under seal. Okay, so let's break this down. We have the plaintiff. We know who that is. It's right here. This is Virginia Giuffre. She entered into a settlement agreement with Jeffrey Epstein with his estate. So we'll call this the settlement agreement here. And that settlement agreement is being referenced in this case. You can see 1933-77. This is the case of Virginia Giuffre versus Alan Dershowitz. So Alan Dershowitz is filing that settlement agreement in this case. It was filed under seal. Okay, it's been executed by the plaintiff and it's been filed under seal in Dershowitz's case. The same document, that same settlement agreement, so we see it here, that same settlement agreement has also been filed by the defendant, which is Prince Andrew, in 216702. So he's the defendant over here, Prince Andrew, and he filed that because Virginia Giuffre is suing him. He filed that settlement agreement as a response to her as a motion to dismiss. We can see that here. So in light of the sealing order in the first motion, it was also filed under seal. But the judge says, even though this was all filed under seal, I asked you to tell me why we cannot make it public. I said back earlier December that we're going to make this public unless you give us good reason about why we shouldn't be making it public. And they didn't tell the court anything that would support it not being made public. And so the court said accordingly on January 3rd, 2022, we are going to be unsealing this document. We're going to place it on the public record and we're going to take a look at it. And so you can see that this was a settlement agreement between Giuffre and Epstein, the late Epstein estate. And so the question is, why would Prince Andrew be submitting that as a motion to dismiss? Why would Alan Dershowitz be submitting that settlement agreement that presumably has nothing to do with them as a motion to dismiss? Well, it's obvious. It's because they think it shields them from some liability. So many people are speculating. They're saying, well, what does the settlement agreement have? What does it hold? What can we glean out of it? Is it going to identify anybody else's name? Is it going to identify broad categories of people who are protected? So is it going to be like the 2007 non-prosecution agreement where it says we have names that are specific in there, but we also have a broad bucket of other people who are covered? Is it going to identify a list of 35 people who are all specifically covered? Is it going to be Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker? Is it going to be that list of people in there? Probably not. But that's what it looks like. And we know there's active litigation between all the parties here. And so let's pause for a quick moment and take a look at the poll. In the poll form, there is a question that is asking specifically, do you think that on January 3rd that we're going to get anything useful out of that settlement agreement? When they release it, the Virginia Giuffre versus Prince Andrew versus Alan Dershowitz, are we going to get anything new out of there? Let's see what you have to say about that. 67% say no new names, no new materials, no new evidence is coming out. Let's drop that poll form one more time. Oh, wait, I don't have that saved up here. Let's grab it over here. And we'll drop that in there. There it goes. Nope, there it goes. I think it's in there. And so you can drop a vote on the settlement agreement, no new names or no new material. And then the next question that we're going to get to, of course, is Prince Andrew. About Prince Andrew. Did he do it? Didn't he do it? Or don't you know? And it's a solid 90% say, yeah, he did it. So I shouldn't have even put that question on there, I suppose. But it's pretty, yeah, that picture looks like it's pretty damning, doesn't it? Settlement agreement, any new names or material? So looking at still about 68% saying, nope, nothing new is going to come out of that. Going to be largely the same. Some people are still optimistic. About 32% say maybe that will be useful. We've got COVID is not an issue for Ghislaine. It doesn't look like any other complications are there. Intelligence agencies might be a big problem, though. 47% say could be a trouble for Ghislaine. We also have 67% say U.S. government incompetence, like, falling asleep at the job, making your cameras malfunction or not making them work, something happening there. Very, very curious. Now, let's go back to the litigation because we have one or two final questions on this poll, in particular about the pattern that we have been seeing, about the pattern of Prince Andrew now, who's involved in litigation, who is going after Virginia Giuffre, saying, well, Caroline implicated her during the Maxwell trial, and now I'm going to do the same thing. We're playing with gas now, folks, right? Nothing is left off the table. We heard his defense team make that same argument. And if we check back on our diagram, we also know that Alan Dershowitz is highly involved in this case. He's in litigation, and he filed a copy, or somebody filed a copy in his case that is back from 2019 in the litigation that is filed against him. He is a defendant in this case, a civil lawsuit. So I was very curious that he was sort of making the rounds yesterday all over the place, and he showed up on the BBC as an independent observer to give his opinion on the Ghislaine Maxwell outcome, because he's a very smart lawyer, very astute scholar. And he is supposed to be opining about the verdict as an independent analyst. And here's how that conversation went with the BBC. Let's see if he's talking about Maxwell.
After a long set of deliberations spanning Christmas with a break, suddenly the jury reached a verdict.
Well, I think the most important thing, particularly for British lawyers, is that the government was very careful who it used as witnesses. It did not use as a witness the woman who accused Prince Andrew, accused me, accused many other people, because the government didn't believe she was telling the truth. In fact, she, Virginia Giuffre, was mentioned in the trial as somebody who brought young people to Epstein for him to abuse. And so this case does nothing at all to strengthen in any way the case against Prince Andrew. Indeed, it weakens the case against Prince Andrew considerably, because the government was very selective in who it used. It used only witnesses who they believed were credible, and they deliberately didn't use the main witness, the woman who started the whole investigation, Virginia Giuffre, because ultimately they didn't believe she was telling the truth. They didn't believe that a jury would believe her, and they were right in doing so. So it was very smart on the part of the government.
Whoa there. Wait a minute there, buddy. So he gets called on to British BBC, the British TV over there. I think they have more channels than that, but he's on there to talk about this. And so he jumps right into the sort of analogy of the Prince Andrew case and saying, I'm going to be applying my opinion to the Prince Andrew case. And in my analysis of the Prince Andrew case, we're going to have a conversation about what a loser Virginia Giuffre is. The government thought she was a terrible witness. I mean, she didn't testify. They said that she was implicated in this thing. She was a part of it. She was involved in the scheme. I mean, she really is like the worst witness ever. And Prince Andrew has nothing to worry about because, as you know, he's being sued by her. I'm also kind of being sued by her. And she's just, the worst witness ever. And you're going, yeah, but brother, you're also being sued by her right now. And you got an active case going on here. Like, is the BBC aware of this? Like, do they know that this is a conflict problem here? Are they going to give her equal time and her lawyer to come back and respond to your claims here? You're brought on as an independent analysis and you're trashing the person who is actively suing you for claims that are directly connected to this case. Because the testimony that came out is being used by Prince Andrew and now by you to undermine the plaintiff in the case. Whoa, okay. So that happens. Now, BBC catches some grief about this thing, rightfully so. They fired up this morning at 3:52 a.m. They said, here's a statement on the interview with Alan Dershowitz. So they posted this. They said, sorry, folks. Last night's interview with Alan Dershowitz after the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict did not meet the BBC's editorial standards, as Mr. Dershowitz was not a suitable person to interview as an impartial analyst, and we did not make the relevant background clear to our audience. We will look into how this happened. Yeah, it's a good question. It'd be very, very good. Now, Alan was still making the rounds. Here he was on Fox News doing the same thing.
I only met Ghislaine Maxwell a handful of times with my wife, with my daughter. When we met her, she was just Jeffrey Epstein's, girlfriend or former girlfriend. We had no idea that any of these things were going on. But I feel bad for everybody involved in this thing, and I hope it will discourage others from doing actions of this kind. Young women have to be protected, and the court and government has to go after people who are perpetrators, but they have to distinguish the true from the false. And that's what I think they may have tried to do. Why they didn't call Virginia Giuffre as a witness, and that helped them. If they had called her as a witness, I think this case would have very likely gone a different way, because the jury would have doubted the credibility of the government's case.
Oh, you see what he said there? Oh, so he's being very sly about this. He's saying, look, she got convicted, and that's the right decision. But if the government would have called Virginia Giuffre, her credibility is so bad, she's such a moron and a horrible person, that if they would have put her on the stand, they would have lost, because the jurors would have just seen she's just a liar, clearly. And they would have come out with a different decision here. And so he's sort of calling her a liar without calling her a liar. See how clever he is? Very smart. Harvard education right there. Can't compete with that. So you can see what a sly dog this fella is. And so he just makes the media rounds. I think I've got one more clip of this fella.
As far as Ghislaine Maxwell is concerned, the government put on witnesses. The witnesses were believed. The jury did come to its conclusion. There will be an appeal. Appeals are always uphill, but there are some issues. There's a statute of limitations issue. After all, some of these things occurred almost 30 years ago. It was back in 1994. Yeah. So there'll be concerns about the statute of limitations, some other issues. But right now, she faces a significant prison sentence.
Can you believe it? It's amazing. So he's like identifying all of these problems with the case as though he's like a neutral, impartial, unbiased observer. You know, all this stuff happened like 30 years ago anyways, including my case, also happened 30 years ago. So, you know, okay. So, all right. The question on the poll, of course, was, what do you think about that? Do you think that's an ethical thing to do? Do you think that's an unethical thing to do? Do you think that it is something that is really not even consequential, kind of doesn't matter either way, whatever? He's out there talking about a case. Who cares? Let's see what you have to say about this. Dershowitz TV appearances. So, you know, actually a good chunk, about a fourth of you say it doesn't really matter. Not a big deal either way. Not ethical, not unethical. Maybe it's improper form. You know, maybe it's like kind of not the best thing to do, but, you know, not a big deal. Not unethical, not ethical. We have 8% say, yeah, it's totally ethical, no problems there at all. But the large majority, about 2/3, say, no, that is unethical. And so for the last segment of the show, we're going to be previewing this question. Is Maxwell going to flip? Answers are yes, no, and unsure. Yes, no, or unsure. We're going to be previewing that because we're going to be going through a very interesting Twitter thread from somebody who used to work out of the Southern District of New York. But as we saw, you know, Alan Dershowitz was making the rounds. We know that Prince Andrew and his lawyers are sort of gearing up. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell, there was a headline yesterday that she might be meeting with somebody from ABC, her attorney, Leah Safian, or one of her family lawyers, or a friend, or whatever she happens to be, was maybe in the courtroom, and they might be setting up some media stuff. There's been a lot of stories about that happening. But the Babylon Bee is reporting that after this conviction, now Ghislaine Maxwell is announcing a new job at CNN. So she got convicted for a number of different crimes, and so now she's going to be working over there at CNN. There's several different, I think, openings that are available now, and the Babylon Bee is reporting that one. And so that was that's a good story. So there is hope for the future, both for CNN and for Ghislaine Maxwell. Another very good meme that came out was this one. We took a look at this photograph. This was allegedly the photograph of the Maxwells, who were apparently at the Epsteins and the Maxwells, who are also apparently at the cottage that the Queen used to go to or something like that. And so Marty McLaughlin over on Twitter, he said this. He said, "Love is finishing each other's sentences." Isn't that nice? Love is finishing each other's sentences. And it's true. It's a beautiful, beautiful photograph here of Epstein and Maxwell, and they are now going to be finishing each other's sentences. Isn't that beautiful? Happy endings, folks. And so the final question that we have, of course, the big question brought to us by Eli Honig, says, will Ghislaine Maxwell flip? Now that she's been convicted by a jury, is she going to flip? You know, she's looking at, like Turley told us, AP told us, many people saying 65 years. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be that, but a long time, and she's not, not a spring chicken anymore. This guy is asking that question. Why should we listen to him? Why does he matter? Well, first of all, he's a blue check mark, so brace yourselves for wisdom incoming. But we also have credentials. I flipped dozens of people at the Southern District of New York. Well, this guy's a prosecutor. He was the co-chief of the organized crime unit, eventually taught new prosecutors the course on how cooperation works. Ugh. I'm going to read a thread from a prosecutor here. All right, let's do it. So this is Eli Honig. He wrote the book Hatchet Man, How Bill Barr Broke the Prosecutor's Code and Corrupted the Justice Department, which I'm sure has been restored to its honor now that Merrick Garland's back there. Okay. So as you can see, folks, look, he's a prosecutor. I'm not going to try to beat up on him too badly. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have some good insight into this process. Of course, he does work over at CNN. So take that for what it's worth. He's a senior legal analyst over there, former federal and state prosecutor, best-selling author. And so I'm always going to dunk on prosecutors a little bit, but with all due respect to Eli, really, I appreciate his thread. He actually put together a really good thread here, and it's very interesting to see how this works from the other side, right? He's a prosecutor over there, and this is an interesting reveal. So here's what he said. First, will Maxwell want to flip? He says, that's an intensely personal and complex decision. Let's consider incentives. 1, she's 60 years old, likely facing much or all of her life behind bars, no real hope on appeal. I would disagree with that. I think that she probably walks on an appeal. That's just me, though. Cooperation is her best and perhaps only chance to get out. So I would say I would disagree with that check bar, with that box. I think that she's got a ton of appealable issues. I'm not an appellate lawyer, but I think that they're going to rerun the Cosby playbook, and I think they've already set it up. So Eli also says, why might she not want to flip? Maybe she doesn't want to give up others. Maybe she's afraid. Maybe she's afraid of the incompetence of the U.S. government, doesn't want to get Epstein. Maybe she's resigned to her fate. She's just given up. I doubt that one. Maybe she hates the prosecutors. Maybe she thinks she's innocent. On paper, she should want to flip, but this isn't always about paper. So could those incentives, what would make you, if you're putting yourself in Ghislaine Maxwell's shoes, what would make you not flip? Well, it'd have to be a better deal. It'd have to be a prospect of getting out. It'd have to be the prospect of winning on an appeal. And if you cooperate, the harm is worse, right? The costs are worse. He continues. He says, if Maxwell does want to flip, then the Southern District of New York also has to want her cooperation. Do they care? Are they even offering her a deal? If Maxwell went over to Comey and said, listen, Maureen, let's just get down to brass tacks here, can we? I've got the names of everybody that you're going to want out there who's a part of the global elite, and I'm going to give you everything that you need to go get them. What do you think she's going to do? Say, perfect. Let me make a career out of this. Let me go talk to my former FBI father and see what he has to say about taking out Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. Do they want this to go anywhere else? I disagree. I think that they want this all wrapped up. So you would take that factor and you would weigh it against that. Is the government offering her a deal? Why would they offer her a deal? They don't want to. They didn't even want to prosecute this case. They did it for 8 days. He continues. He says, a related side story. I once convicted an old school Genovese capo of murder. He gets life. When we then had the FBI agent go talk to him in prison to try to flip him, figuring a mobster had nothing to lose. Mobster politely told the agent, no thanks, I'll die here. And guess what? He did. In Southern District of New York, cooperation is all or nothing. Maxwell, and so he worked there, right? So this is why his insight is very valuable. Maxwell would have to give up everything she ever did and everything she knows about anybody else. Okay, so it's not like she can just give them a bite at the apple. They want it all. No hedging, no holding back, no half-truths. If the Southern District of New York is convinced she'll do that, well, then cooperation is possible. Note that the SDNY wouldn't be cooperating her first and then hoping for the best. They'd fully debrief her first and decide she's entirely honest on board before giving her a deal. They don't flip people on a hope and credit. They make sure first. Prosecutors prefer to, quote, cooperate up, use cooperators against more powerful players, not less. This is a preference, but not an ironclad rule. Here, Maxwell was number 2 and Epstein was number 1, and he's dead. So who else is there to get? It's a good question. Well, I don't know. The Prince is a pretty good one. Prince is a pretty good one. Trump, if they want that, right? If they think he did something, why wouldn't they go after him? Why wouldn't they go after Clinton? We heard from Annie Farmer's lawyer, Sydney, and she said, no, we're on a warpath here. This is one step, but we're going to make sure that no president and no prince can ever do this again. Well, you need to do something about it, don't you? SDNY, are you gonna? So Eli says, which brings us to a little bit of an unusual wrinkle. Maxwell might be able to give up information on others who were less involved in the conspiracy, but were otherwise major powerful players, like men who knowingly engaged with Epstein and his underage girls. Southern District of New York might, in that scenario, decide it is worth it to flip her, but only if there's a realistic way and a prosecutorial commitment to charge those others, whoever they might be. Says that'll depend on the willingness of the DOJ and perhaps even the state prosecutors to go after these powerful people and whether relevant laws like statute of limitations would even permit it. Which would probably be at the fake because, right? Bottom line, Maxwell's cooperation is not particularly likely, but it is possible. You need Maxwell to be willing and fully on board, SDNY to be fully convinced of her truthfulness, and a realistic plan to use her information versus the others. So three good criteria there. I think is very, 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 very interesting. So we'll see. What do you have to say about that? Do you think that Ghislaine Maxwell would flip? Do you think she's going to flip? I don't think so. Let's take a look at the poll. On the poll form, we've got, nope, looking even more like a no. We've got 72% now. This is now up. Says no. Unsure, we've got 45, 13%. We've got 14% say yes. Maybe she will, in fact, flip. And so we can see we've got a lot of responses here today. Up at the top, the biggest danger to Ghislaine is intelligence agencies, 51% to 42%. U.S. government incompetence taking on a second. All right. And so that, my friends, is it for the show. Let's take a look at some of the questions over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com to see what we have here today. Oh, first and foremost, we had a nice comment from Vienticus Prime. So Vienticus sent over this book, amazing book. It's called Electrical Concepts for Everyday People, written by Charles Kovacs here. And I've never seen anything quite like this. I'm not an electrical person, but you can see the level of detail that is in this book is like insane, is like jaw-dropping. Vienticus says, people say knowledge is power. I say knowledge is freedom. I hope you enjoy the book, Rob. Digital is fine, but I always get things that are tangible. But I always say it's most important for people to be as self-sufficient as possible. So midnight tomorrow Eastern time, I'm putting a link to the PDF of my book, free for members of your locals. That's from Vienticus Prime. So what he's saying, folks, very generous, very nice of Vienticus. If you want to learn how to electrify things, this book is going to be available, and Vienticus Prime is going to be your teacher, the educator-in-chief, to really make sure that you're electrified as can be, and you know the ins and outs of electricity. It's not complicated. It's for everyday people. Thank you for that, Vienticus. You're very generous, and I appreciate you being a part of our community. It really is an amazing book, and I am going to be flipping through it. Thunder7 says, well done, Rob. You called it. Said she would be convicted, yet have a very good chance with the appeal due to the 2006 prosecution agreement. How long would the appeal take? Reason I ask is because the entire trial was conducted to produce a very weak case with no names named. However, Maxwell will flip if she doesn't get out of jail soon on her appeal. You know, appeals can take a while. There's no question about that. I don't think it's going to be wrapped up anytime soon. I think she's going to have to buckle tight. But I think she's got a ton of appealable issues. In fact, I think that this entire defense was really built around creating as many appealable issues as they possibly could. And so thank you for that, Thunder7. We've got another one here from Locals says, Thunder7 says, I looked at all 46 pages of the flight logs. GM always flew together, but I already see fake news trying to make her out to be another victim. Once again, Bill Clinton was the frequent flyer. But no, not Trump, not once. Naomi Campbell flew on the plane too. Glenn Dubin, his wife, Eva, Gates, Bezos, none of those names popped up at trial. What a dog and pony show. The judge could have really shocked with the guilty verdict. Could really have been shocked with the guilty verdict. Yeah, maybe she was shocked. I don't know. I don't know. It's good to see you, Thunder. Let's see what's over at YouTube. We've got Laguna Beach Bunny says, you rock, Robert. Thanks for an awesome coverage on the Maxwell case, all the cases. Enjoy watching you. You make me giggle. Happy New Year from Claudia. Well, thank you, Claudia. Thanks for being here. I'm glad that you have fun. I have a lot of fun here also. And I couldn't do it without you, of course. We have Not Applicable says, we only need, quote, the truth, though, not subjective truth. In other words, the objective truth. And yeah, and so that is ideal, right? Everybody has their own versions of truth, but you want to make sure that you adhere to the actual objective truth when you can. Some guy's burner account has super chatted, says, please talk about Jack Murphy. Ugh. I got a glimpse of that thing going on there. And, you know, there is a dog pile of epic proportions going on in that whole story. And I'm not entirely up to speed on exactly what's going on here, but there's some interesting things happening with that situation. And listen, I don't like people who are fraudulent in any way. I don't like people who are not authentic. I think that is a very reprehensible thing to do. But I also understand that people make mistakes, man. I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I understand that people do stupid things and they make dumb decisions and they don't think right all the time, and people might have other things going on in their lives that we can't wrap our heads around and we just don't understand. And so, you know, when I don't understand what's going on and stuff like that, I don't want to be a part of the slamming of any of that. I follow him on Twitter. I was sort of surprised by his rise. He kind of started showing up all over the place. It was just kind of a weird thing going on there with that story. But thanks for asking about it. I know a lot of other people are talking about it, but I'm probably not going to comment any more than that because I don't really know exactly what's going on there. Marza Pana says, no question there, just a nice super chat. Thank you, Marzi. I appreciate that, Marzi. We have Mark Owens says support from Atlanta, Georgia. Well, shout out Mark Owens from Atlanta. We're going to be talking about the Garrett Rolfe case at some point if they decide to do anything with that. We have, oh my God, this is awesome. LOL says, will Maxwell even be offered an opportunity to flip? And so that's a good question. That was kind of the last segment of the analysis from Eli, right? He said, well, they might not even give her that. Like, the prosecutors have to want to do something with this. And if they don't want to do anything with this, then there's not even going to be an offer there. Chris Wolney says, Rob, in regard to the question of the intelligence community to Maxwell, I'll say the same thing as I would about the White House citing, quote, national security to push back on the J6 committee. There are no true checks, balances, or oversights on the intelligence community, and national security is the most abused color of law anyone has ever heard of. Ignorance is bliss for anyone who is not aware of or intimidated by these facts. Yeah, I mean, right. We absolutely have, sort of supra-governmental structures, I think, that influence a lot of what happens in our country, and the IC is one of those. Let's see. Jeremy Matrida is here, and I saw a chat from Jeremy. I don't think he's happy with my Dershowitz conversation. Says, Rob, not sure if you listened to the other 911 calls from the officer involved in LA and Burlington. One of those calls asked if the assailant had a gun. Caller said yes. OP asked if there were shots fired, and caller said yes. That's why the LAP went in with guns blazing. They thought he was an active shooter. Yeah, but there was another 911 call that said no, there wasn't. So I can understand that, but I think it's a close call, and I think that we'll continue to talk about that one for the foreseeable future. Good to see you, though, Jeremy. Alexander Acosta says, is the prosecutor who signed that 2007 plea deal with Epstein, says he should have to serve the rest of the time that Epstein should have gotten from the jump. I think I'm willing to sacrifice him as a good warning to the rest of his corrupt buddy prosecutors out there to make sure this doesn't happen again. Leafy Bug is here, says, if anything, this trial demonstrated that the rich and powerful presidents and princes are clearly above the law. I'm sure some of the worst people in the world are sleeping more soundly tonight. Yeah, it's done. Ghislaine Maxwell's done. Their name didn't come out at trial. She's going to get sentenced. They'll appeal it. No more public spectacles. And that's it. So yeah, I'm sure they're very happy. Oh, Alex Acosta's here, the 2007 prosecutor. Says, don't blame me. I was ordered by several alphabet agencies to back off prosecuting too heavily on Epstein. By the way, I am not suicidal, which is really good news. You can't imagine the pressure on these people, right? Why did he get that deal? 40 minors. 40. Ages 13 to 17. The U.S. government gave him 13-month sentence that he basically served at a country club. Why is that? John Delar says, she is a scapegoat. I know that some of those ladies are just lying and they see dollar signs. I'm 100% sure Alan Dershowitz didn't do anything. I knew as soon as that one woman made the claim she was lying. Prince Andrew isn't that stupid either. Yeah, so we got some defense over there for Alan Dershowitz. I think he's a smart attorney. I think he's doing what he thinks best. But I think that he should have known better to not try to act as an impartial attorney and an independent analyst on the news. That wasn't appropriate. Kincaid says, evening, Rob. This is the question about the other day. The shooting at the coat store troubled me. The guy was not moving much with either direct side profile to the officer. Additionally, the injured woman on the ground was moving and looking around. Would not a hip or femur shot have worked in the situation, considering it didn't want any non-lethal methods? Intuitively, I think beanbag counters worked out. It is less costly for the agencies to deal with a quick death. Well, I don't know about that, Kincaid. I'm not sure if there's been sort of a financial analysis on officer-involved shootings, but I can't imagine that they're cheap. I got to imagine it's very expensive to go through an OIS versus a non-OIS. So I'm not sure about that, but yeah, and I don't think it's appropriate to ask people for hip or femur shots, right? If you're gonna shoot, you should be shooting to kill. I mean, that's why you shoot, is to eliminate somebody. You shoot them in the hip or the thigh or whatever like that, then they bleed out slowly in pain and agony, and you just killed them anyways. But it was just very bad, very horrendous. Vienticus says things just got a little uncivil in the chat. Shout out to Uncivil Law, who's here. Go check out his channel, everybody. My headphones just unplugged, so I got to plug those puppies back in. 1 second. Says a shout out to Uncivil Law, who's here. Go check out his channel, everybody. Shout out to Uncivil. Oh yeah, and I know we still have to have that moderator conversation. We'll do that soon. We have another chat here from Kincaid. Says these cases. A gift, tons of layers with a pretty ribbon. In the end, a towering box that ends up being a broke fidget spinner. That was from Kincaid. We have a few more. Nikki Dragon is here. Says, do you believe that the arrests over at CNN tie into this case, or because Cuomo spilled the beans because CNN refused to pay out his contract? It's a good question. I'm looking into that story. I may do a video on that maybe over the weekend. But yeah, there's some interesting things. It's kind of like this domino effect is happening. Governor Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo. Then you have the Cuomo, I think, producer. Then I think Jake Tapper's producer. There's like this snowball thing happening over there at CNN, which is why Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be a new anchor over there. I think she's replacing Chris. We have John Delar says, is Virginia Giuffre supposed to be Pollyanna? Get real. She's a liar and a grifter. As far as the picture with Prince Andrew, there was nothing going on but what you want to see. It's just a nice pic. You want a big scandal. This is conspiracy land. Virginia is not a credible witness. She just sees dollar signs. There's nothing going to stop her from getting it because people want it to be true. That's from John Delar. John Delar 52 is in the house. It's a valid perspective, right? I think that there is a lot of criticism for a lot of what we heard out of this. Robert Johnson is here. Robert, I'm coming to yours next. Hang tight, Robert Johnson. Let's go to Robert Johnson right now. You're next up. Robert Johnson's here. Says, if she gets 30 years or she flips, Israeli president and the U.S. president. If she gets 30 years or over, she flips. Israeli president and the U.S. president. But here's the problem with that, Robert. Robert, if she gets that sentence, then she loses her ability to negotiate. So see, this is part of the deal. She's running out of time. She's going to be sentenced at some point, and then the sentence is what the sentence is. And so she's got to, they got to come to a deal if she's going to negotiate between now and the sentence. Because if she's sentenced to 15 years and then she starts spilling the beans all over the place, unless they've worked this out before that, she's still going to be serving that 15 years. It's a good question. Not applicable says, don't think Dersh did stuff, but I think he knows that Bill did. That's from not applicable. Yeah, look, I don't know about the Dersh stuff. I just don't think the way that he carried himself on the news was appropriate. Not applicable says, you have a bunch of feds in your locals, apparently. You have a bunch of feds in there? Probably. Robert Johnson says, why do you have Super Chat when you do not answer any of mine? I think we have another one here. Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson says, great coverage. Happy New Year from Sweden. Robert, it's because they're coming in so fast. I can't see them all. I'm thankful that you're here. Shout out to Sweden, my friends over there. Robert Johnson says, why are the videos from the New York estate not shown? And I think what you're talking about, it's a good question, but a lot of that stuff was redacted. Remember, he had images and paintings all over the wall that had big blacked out marks on them. And we didn't see much of that, but we did see the video that was recorded out of Palm Beach. But you're right. We didn't see any video out of New York, and I would be very curious to see that. So hopefully we got all of yours, Robert Johnson. Thank you. Sorry about the mix-up there. We have another one from Rolf Peterson. Says, with regard to libelous AI being smart or clever. The bar of intelligence, perspicacity, and critical thinking is so effing low. Key, such kudos mean nada. Critical thinking is so low. Here, kudos don't mean anything. Liberal AIs being smart or clever. Thank you for that. Rolf Peterson is in the house. And so Robert Johnson is here again, says, so she needs to have a deal in place before sentencing. So like the outlines of a deal, right? Because then what they could do is push sentencing back, or they could, make it contingent on some other things happening. And then the government, you could have a deferred sentence for a long period of time. And then the government could come back out and say, listen, she gave us 60 of these people and we've got convictions out of all of these. And so as a result of this, we're going to recommend an absolute minimum sentence. They are separate processes for that reason, right? She's going to go and she's going to be interviewed, and they're going to do a pre-sentence interview, and her attorneys are going to be there, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that goes into this. And so the point here is that the government makes a recommendation, the defense makes a recommendation, you have an independent third party that sort of makes a recommendation that's sort of supposed to be representing the court, more or less, or probation department. And then they all give their opinion, and the judge makes the sentence. But the prosecution, right, they still have some leeway. We talk about these sentencing charts, these ranges, presumptive terms, upward departures, downward departures, deviations, all those things. A lot of that is going to be taking place now. This is that argument. When you take a look at the sentencing charts and moving things, and I'm trying to think of the case that we went through this on. Oh, Kim Potter. We looked at that was state court, but this is federal court, but same type of concept. We're talking about charts and analyzing where she might fall into place. And so yes, Robert Johnson, there needs to be some sort of a framework or a deal. Now keep in mind, right, this whole thing may not be wrapped up. Like, before sentencing happens, she's not going to give them enough information and then go out there and be able to prosecute those people and get them convicted. And it's not going to be resolved. So my point is they would need at least a framework in place before the sentencing went into effect. Okay, Rolf Peterson says libelous Al Dershowitz was my intent. So we can read that again. With regard to libelous Al being smart or clever, the bar of intelligence, perspicacity, and critical thinking is so effing low here has no meaning. Thank you for that, Rolf. Magnus says, why would she be negotiating a deal now? She's been convicted, so she has just lost any leverage she had. Please elucidate. So the only reason she would do that is to get a more minimal sentence, right? That's the leverage. Ghislaine Maxwell, information, government's leverage, asking for the maximum. If Ghislaine is willing to give some of that up in exchange for a reduction of asking for the maximum, asking for the minimum, or the absolute mitigated sentence, or a departure, or whatever, right? That's the leverage. She gives up, she gets a little bit. The question is, does the government want what she has, and are they willing to give her what she wants? I doubt it. But that would be the incentive structure there. Rolf Peterson says, yeah, Al Dershowitz was my intent. So thank you for those. We also have Leafy Bug says, I would have chosen don't know for Prince Andrew, but for that interview. It is a case study in how not to conduct damage control. Sheesh. I found Dersh's denials made over the last couple of years to be more compelling, but he should probably stop flapping his gums at this point. That's from Leafy Bug. Yeah, that interview from Prince Andrew was very bad, right? Not good at all. Ghost Gunner says, I wonder what kind of interest and ownership the royal family has in the BBC. If they have any, it would make sense to bring on Alan to smack talk the plaintiff against the Prince Andrew. Yeah, you don't know, right? You don't know any of those things. There's a book that's on my queue. It's called The Gray Lady something. It's about the New York Times. The Gray Lady Winks, something like that. The Gray Lady Winked. This is a story about New York Times and their misreporting. Okay, and I didn't realize this. It's getting really good reviews. It's brand new this year. How New York Times misreporting, distortions, and fabrications radically alter history. And so that's kind of on deck. But apparently the New York Times is owned by like one family in New York, which I didn't know. And they like control the whole thing. That's the long and short of that. But yeah, big question is same concept in the UK. Who owns these places and who sets that up? I mean, they're supposed to be a reputable news organization. Kincaid says Dershowitz, wow, brilliant move. He uses the road lied down by the prosecution and his prestige to defame and help his buddies. Even his verbiage and his key points are masterclass spin BS. I am not trusting, but I am impressed. That's from Kincaid. Another one from John Delar says they're saying Alan Dershowitz is unethical because of the way you're framing things. Okay, so I was certainly was biased on that one. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I let my opinion hide on that one. We have another question. Says, oh my gosh, Murphy, the BBC must have had to budget out their audio people or something with all that horrible feedback. Imagine if you had their budget, would have a way better product. Jesus Murphy is what somebody said. Sergeant Bob says, if Maxwell can reduce her time in the big house significantly, sure she will. But she may wait to see if she can win an appeal first. Will not give anything if she does not have to. But alas, you covered all this. And that's from Sergeant Bob. Thank you, Sergeant Bob, for being here. Yeah, I think that you're onto something there. You know, if she can create a structure that will, well, we'll see what happens. Vianticus Prime says, I left out the word until. The link is up now. I'll be taking the link down at midnight. So that's from Vianticus. If you want a copy of his book, it's called Electrical Concepts for Everyday People. Brilliant. Electrify your life, folks. Go get the copy over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That's from Vianticus Prime. And it really is an impressive book. I can't believe you wrote all of that. Honestly, it's like incredible. Leafy Bug says the prosecutor is a funny guy, pretending not to realize that the last thing the government wants is for Maxwell to flip. I wonder what kind of deal they'd offer her. Tell us all you know, and we'll only ask the judge for another 65 life sentences on top of what you're already serving. And we'll also move you into Epstein's former cell with the dodgy CCTV system and the sleepy guards. Great deal. That's from Leafy Bug. Yeah, we'll see if there's going to be anything that comes out of it. I doubt it. Vianticus says, by the way, did the sound post fall out of the package or did you get it? The sound post? Oh, is this a sign? I think this is what you're talking about. Vianticus also sent this, watching the Watchers, and I think it's a signpost. So you put it on a sign and you thank you for this, Vianticus. So I got a book, I'm electrified, and I'm identified because I have a signpost. Thanks to Vianticus Prime. Appreciate you, my brother. Monster One says, rumor has it that Epstein killed himself because he couldn't handle being on the BBC every day. That's from Monster One. One more time. Rumor has it Epstein killed himself because he couldn't handle being on the BBC every day. Not the news channel. We have Kincaid says, thank you for the explanation. I was trying to be cruel. I think perhaps some of the newer tech out there needs to be utilized. That's from Kincaid. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. PWSMKAZ says, a quote from Ronald Reagan, says, we must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It is time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions. It's from Ronald Reagan. It's from PWSMKAZ. Good quote, smart man. Thank you for that. We have a few more before we wrap it up for the day. We've got Monster One says, before the Burlington shooting, there was several 911 calls about an active shooter. Those cops were fully expecting a man armed with a gun. Completely justified shooting. Sure sucks the girl lost her life and the family should get a nice paycheck, but this officer shouldn't be charged. We have some hot opinions still about that case. We're going to have to revisit that one, aren't we? Sergeant Bob sent me like 2 other emails afterwards. Addendum. Because I love you, Sergeant Bob. Very thorough, very good police officer. You know, supplemental reports is what he's filing. And I appreciate the disclosure. Thank you for that, Sergeant. Monster One says, the only deal they are interested in is Trump. Maxwell could try to give up everyone, and the prosecution would say they only want Trump. Maxwell could say Trump never did anything, and the prosecution would say, well, you better make up something, or you're going to die in prison. Trump or death, pick one. I wouldn't put it past SDNY for a minute. Monster One says, anyone interested in the Jack Murphy content can go check out The Quartering. Jack got The Quartering suspended on Twitter. They are going hard at each other. All right. So, yes, the Quartering is making videos on it. That's actually a really good place to get caught up if you want to get caught up on the drama. And it is drama, folks. I mean, good Lord, it's like a slow motion train wreck happening in real time. And so proceed accordingly. Remember that there are human beings on the end of everything that we do. Even on the internet, even if people are trash, they're still humans. And they deserve a little bit, you know, a little bit, just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. Pete Hill is here, says BBC is a taxpayer-funded British chartered public corporation. Taxpayers pay $180 per year in a tax or a fee. You got to pay for that? What do we pay for ours? We pay for public PBS, but I don't know that it's a fee that we attach anywhere. Oh, that sounds terrible. But we probably have that here. What do I know? All right, my friends. I think that is it for the questions for the show for the day. Let me make sure that I got everything. I don't want to make Robert Johnson any more mad at me. Robert Johnson out there, I hope we're still friends. And I think that's it, my friends. And let's take a quick look at the chat for just a few minutes over at YouTube. You know, Rumble is not working, but we're going to get that started back up here in a minute. We've got Bob Jones over there, that one that got away. C. Reed says, are you accusing me of being a human, Rob? Huh? Are you? Yeah, I am. Yeah, you specifically, in particular, C. Reed. We've got Ghislaine Maxwell, follow the family. That is from Debbie Hall. Happy New Year, all. That's from Citizen. Happy New Year to everybody. We need a license. We've got Lean says, Rob, check this chat. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at you, Lean. I'm reading you right now. Steve Briggs says, hey, Rob, nobody is going to jail. That's from Jeremy Martin. We have Vianticus Prime saying, I identify as a meat popsicle. That was from The Fifth Element, which happens to be one of the best movies of all time. We have Mike Brady says, a Democrat equals Emilio, somebody. Vijaya is here, says, Happy New Year, citizen. Happy New Year to you also. We have Mickey who's being here. He's being a little punk. The one that got away. Love you back. We've got Stace on the case says LMAO. The Maxwell history is all a lie. Rob is annoying, but he's a tenacious defender. Well, that's true. I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a nice compliment. Annoying is a nice compliment. I want to be that finally, I want to be that defense lawyer that finally the prosecutor goes, all right. Yes, here, take it. And I'll say, yes, thank you. It's about time. Hopefully we don't have to go through this again. But if we do, I'll be back. So shout out to the Breaches mom. We've got, you do annoy me a lot. Yeah, that's from DFO Brown. Yeah, I don't blame it. Somebody says Joey is greater than Rob, which is 100% true. Not even offended by that. Absolutely right. We have 2022. BBC has nothing to do with the UK. Somebody's confirming for us the BBC has is not the news station in the UK. Mossad calls the shots. Over on Locals, Leafy Bug says, we're still chatting away over here, which is true. Jumpin' Jeff says, humans being humans. And so Miss Danny says, Robert didn't get my message. Where did I miss it, Miss Danny? Did I miss it on the chat? That was from 2 days ago. Miss Danny, did I miss it? Where is this? Oh, man, I apologize if I missed it. Well, we'll have to reconnect and get it back another time because I'm not seeing Miss Danny over there. But that, my friends, is it for me for the day. Jeremy Matreed is over there. We've got Not the Great are chatting. Jump in, Jeff. Leafy Bug. I saw Miss Danny in the house, but I missed her question. And we're going to leave it there, my friends. So tomorrow, it is New Year's Eve. And tomorrow, we have a premiere that's scheduled at the same time that this show goes live. And so it's going to be the Why Alec Baldwin Must Be Prosecuted premiere, scheduled for 4 p.m. Arizona time. And I think Miss Danny just sent a question in here. Let's see here. Radicy says, yeah, we need to listen to Joey and ignore the drama. That's the lesson from Joey. Very smart man. We have PWS MKAZ says, can you look into the recent Alec Jones recent lawsuit loss? Yeah, I can take a look. I have not heard of that one, but I will I will look at that one. Yeah, Miss Danny says, I wanted to say thank you for a whole year of good presentations. Happy New Year. By the way, I sent you a previous message, but seems you didn't get it. Best for the next year. If it's over on locals, I have to check those, and I will do that, Miss Danny. But Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everybody else out there. Tomorrow, it's going to be a premiere. So it's 56 minutes. It's a pre-recorded video. It's a presentation that I did on the three big overarching reasons why Alec Baldwin must be prosecuted. And so there is a premiere that's taking place tomorrow. It will not be live, but it's going to be a full hour. And so come by and chat around, and I'll certainly be swinging by to say hello. And so that's going to be it for the show. The first video, I think that I'm going to publish in the new year, well, we still have a little bit of time on that, is probably going to be an existence system video that will be a premiere that goes live on New Year's Day. It won't be live. It'll be a recorded existence system video. We did that a long time ago, earlier this year. And so be on the lookout for that. And then I'll just be, releasing stuff sporadically in between here and there. Planning a lot for 2022. Got a whole big vision for the future of this channel and the type of content, the type of time I'm going to be able to invest into it. And so I'm pretty excited about it. And I want to say thank you to everybody for being so supportive and such a fun part of this experience for me and a part of this community that we're building, doing the good work that we will continue to do, God willing, and with your support. And so that, my friends, is it for us for today. Be back here tomorrow for the Alec Baldwin Must Be Prosecuted premiere. And if I don't see you before then or after then or whenever, have a tremendously beautiful Happy New Year. Be very safe. Make sure to Uber everywhere you go. Take the law enforcement interaction training if you want to be risky, but seriously, be very safe out there. It is a very, very busy time around the year. Law enforcement is out in full force. And so that will be the last of that. Now, without anything else to say, everybody have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. And I will see you right back here soon. Bye-bye, my friends.